welcome everybody back to the Jankyard. It's time for our deck tech. It's one I'm excited to show you. It's one I was actually playing in Standard before the rotation in October. It was just changing one card. And it's fun because it has an alternate win condition. You know how much I love alternate win conditions. Specifically, the alternate win condition we're playing here is Simic Ascendancy. For Simic Ascendancy, it's a 2-mana enchantment. You can pay 1, a green and a blue to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And then, whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. Is this easy to accomplish? No. But War of the Spark, with its plentiful number of proliferate cards, really has made this a moderately feasible deck. So we're going to go through what we've got here. We'll start with Benthic Biomancer. Have it as a 3 of. You can adapt it on turn 2. Put a counter on it. The nice thing is whenever counters go on it, and with this deck there's a lot of ways to get counters on creatures even other than adapt. It'll draw a card, discard a card. So that's a nice thing. Pollenbright Druid. Just love Pollenbright Druid. For 1 of the green, it's a 1/1, but you can either put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, including itself, or you can proliferate. So, I mean, the great thing is if this comes out a few turns in and you have the Simic Ascendancy and it's got 2 growth counters on it, plus you've got 2 creatures, each with a +1/+1 counter on it, you proliferate with Pollenbright Druid. Well, okay, the Simic Ascendancy then goes from 2 up to 3 because it proliferates, so it adds a growth counter. And then it adds +1/+1 counters to each of those other 2 creatures. Well, so they each got an additional +1/+1 counter, which means Simic Ascendancy gets 2 more counters. So it goes from having 2 counters up to 5. Proliferate's just super strong, and I love the fact that the Pollenbright Druid can get you a +1/+1 counter early on or when you need it, but when it's time to proliferate and you've got a bunch of counters already out, it's great for that. This is our only real interaction, and it's Rabid Bite. And I put it in because we need something. You need a way to slow your opponents down. Now, granted, you need to have creatures out that can have enough power to make the punch effect of this work, but it works pretty well. Not something you're going to play on turn 2 usually, but it is a good way to slow your opponents down. Merfolk Skydiver, great creature, played early, as long as you've got the color mana for it. But comes in, you can put a +1/+1 counter on any creature, including itself. And then in the late game, that 3 and a green and a blue proliferate. It's fantastic, because it's exactly what you want to do. Now we have the Simic Ascendancy. Another all-star in this deck is Evolution Sage. Say you play it on turn 4 where you've already got 3 lands out, you play it, then you play a land, boom, proliferate everything you've got out there already. This is a very powerful card because every time you play a land you proliferate. So, and this deck is not short on land, so this is a great card. The one issue with it gets a lot of attention, tends to eat removal a lot. So, it's just one thing to keep in mind. You may only get 1 or 2 activations. That's why I like to play it on turn 4 if I've got that 4th land, or whenever I get that 4th land, so that I can play it, then play the land right away and get at least an activation out of it, because otherwise it will often eat a removal spell pretty quick. Jan Yangu, Wildcrafter, solid card. I like the fact that it allows all your creatures with +1/+1 counters to be mana dorks. That's fine, but the big thing is it just puts a +1/+1 counter on a target creature for -1. Now that's great. Sharkdo Crab, just have it as a 1 of, but it's a solid little card. 4 mana to cast, same 4 mana to adapt to a blue and a green. And it's just an adapt 1, although it starts as a 4/4. But I like that when it's one or more counters are put on it, tap target creature an opponent controls, and that creature does not untap during its owner's next untap step. So if you start putting multiple counters on it, which this deck gives you lots of ways to do that, yeah, you can tap down their board pretty good. Here's a fun one. Galloping Lizrog. We got it as a 2/of because it's 5 mana. But it's a 3/3 trampler, and when it enters the battlefield, you may remove any number of +1/+1 counters from among creatures you control, and if you do, put twice that many counters, +1/+1 counters on it. So, okay, say you've got the Ascendancy out, and you've got 2 counters on one creature and 1 on another. And so the Ascendancy's got, maybe it's got 4 counters on it because of those 3 counters plus there was a proliferation. So with the Lizrog, I mean, you've already, from that one creature with the 2 counters on it, you've already gotten 2 counters on your Ascendancy, possibly 3 with proliferation. Now this comes, it can, say it's a Merfolk Skydiver and a Biomancer, so they'll both go back to 1/1. They won't die. So you take all those counters off them, all 3 off those 2 creatures. Well, Lizrog gets 6. Well, now Simic Ascendancy just got 6 more. After already getting growth counters from those 3 +1/+1 counters, it gets 6 more off them. That's super valuable. But you don't want a Lizrog early on. It's something you want to see later in the game. Another thing that is great is Roalesk, the Apex Hybrid. 2 green and a blue. It has Flample, Flying and Trample. But when it enters the battlefield, put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control. So there you go. Keep pushing up that Ascendancy. And then when it dies, it proliferates. And then it proliferates again. So it could eat a removal spell because a 4/5 flyer with Trample is going to worry your opponent. But if they do that, they do it at their own risk. If you've got a lot of counters out, which you want to with this deck. Now, here are some rock stars. First, the one new addition from Eldraine, the Stone Coil Serpent. It's great. It has protection from multicolor, it has reach and trample, but the cost is X, and it enters the battlefield with X counters on it. So that's just straight, okay, I have 1 mana open. Okay, it's a 1/1. But it's got counters, so it can proliferate. Oh, I've got, it's late game. I got 6 mana wide open. Hey, let's just put 6 on it. Wow, it starts off with 6. And the same with Ugin's Conjurant. Very similar. So that's just great. It's just, there's no, it's not XX, it's just X. You spend that mana, you get that many counters, and push up the Ascendancy. It's great. The Voracious Hydra, a great card. Because you pay X again, you might only pay 1 as X, so it only gets 1 counter on it. But when there's the battlefield, you can either have a fight creature you don't control, fight target creature you don't control if you want, but preferably you want to double the number of +1/+1 counters you put on it. So if it comes in and X is 3, it's 3 counters, then you do that. Okay, it's 6 counters. Well, you've just put 6 counters on your Simic Ascendancy. That's phenomenal. Other than that, we got lands. We have 6 islands, 6 forest. We've got all different ones. So 7 forests. That's just me. 4 breeding pools, 3 Temple of Mystery, and then the big one land-wise, Karn's Bastion, because for 4 and tap this, you can proliferate. That's great. It can be a struggle when you've got, say, a forest and a bastion in turn 1, turn 2, and you want to cast the Ascendancy. That's pretty rough. So the bastion can be a problem, but it's just great when it comes to proliferating. Sideboard. We got a couple of opt. Essence Capture to counter creature spells. Quench for early on counterspell. Iron Shell Beetle It's possible if you need an extra creature in there early on, you want to maybe be a little quick, and it puts counters on. Encouraging Crisis. Put a counter on and proliferate. It's there if you have time to do a little more. If you need a bigger creature, Bloom Hulk. There's a battlefield, proliferate. Outmuscle's not a bad one, because you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, then it fights target creature you don't control. Vivian, Arcbow Ranger. Distribute. The +1 is distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among up to 2 target creatures to gain trample until end of turn. It's great. And Planewide Celebration, where you choose these modes, you choose 4 from these modes, and you can do the same mode more than once. So, I mean, yeah, you might want to gain life or put a permanent from the graveyard back into your hand or create a citizen creature token, but ultimately you could proliferate 4 times. That might be enough to finish the game off. So it's something to put in if you've got a bit of a slow game, but you feel you might be able to get up to that 7 mana, because that could be a finisher. And that is counting up to 20. Because remember, the whole point of the name of this deck is in Magic, you want to count down from 20 to 0. But with this deck, with this alternate win condition, you want to count up to 20 to get to that 20 growth counters. So, yeah, that's counting up to 20. It's a lot of fun. It's hard to make it work, to be perfectly honest, but I've made it happen a few times. So we'll have some, in the near future, gameplay video. And just remind you to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. And also click the little bell below if you want to get updates and reminders of when we put out new videos. And we're going to be got lots of deck techs coming out in the next little while. Don't forget to check our website, jankyardmtg.com. Check us on social media at jankyardmtg and Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And come check us out, twitch.tv/jankyardmtg. We're playing Arena and MTG Online, playing some Pioneer. Live on Sundays and Wednesdays, and possibly other days. Check our social media. We'll update you when we're going live. And also find on our website some details on our Patreon program, which will be starting soon. So thank you once again for checking out Counting Up to 20. I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully you can try this deck out and see if you can get that alternate win condition to go off, because it's so much fun when it does. So thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.